Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on the time zone that you have joined us today from. We are now live, and I welcome you all on this executive webinar. Let's wait for a couple of minutes here, as I do see that there are still people joining on our live stream as well as here on Zoho. So we'll take a couple of minutes over here, and then we shall begin our webinar right at 11. Folks joining us live today, if you could just drop in your name, your organization, and your email address, and also the purpose of joining today, our team will get in touch with you in terms of the webinar assets and also keep you posted in terms of other webinars happening. Once again, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on the time zone that you have joined us today from. I, Ishita Mathur, am your host for today and bring to you this webinar on Epic integration in terms of CDS hooks and AI agents. Now, before we begin, let me give you a quick background about who we are and what we do. So here at Mindbowser, we are a 100% healthcare-focused organization. We have 200 plus resources of ours, all of whom are FHIR certified and HIPAA trained. We've been in this industry for over 13 years now, and having that said, we have already worked with 100 plus healthcare-based organizations. We do have 50 plus ready recipes for acceleration already, and I'm also happy to mention that we are a zero carbon footprint organization building a greener future together. Now on the screen at this moment, you can also see our partnership ecosystem where we've listed the major partners amongst whom we have worked. Epic is one of our major partners, and we will be speaking in more detail about Epic. And I'm also proud to mention that Mindbowser is Epic's approved vendor service program. Now, before further ado, let's get started with this webinar. So before we begin, let me introduce you to our panelists for today. Today, we have with us Abhinav, who is our healthcare interoperability expert. Abhinav, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Okay, Shida, thank you. So hi everyone, this is Abhinav Moite. I've been working as a senior business analyst at Mindbowser. I've been working in US healthcare domain for more than 5 years currently, and I was working mostly around the smart on FHIR, data interoperability, different FHIR versions, CDS hooks, EHRs, HL7 versions, and also different FHIR versions as well. So along with that, I've worked on different EHRs, building different modules, working on different module integrations, etc. And today we'll be looking into the CDS hook integration and how we do it, what are the use cases of the CDS hooks, and what are the benefits of CDS hooks as well. So thank you everyone for joining.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abhinav. And joining us today is Mayuraj, who is our CDS hooks integration specialist. Mayuraj, could you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. Thanks, Ishita. Hey everyone. Good morning. So I am Mayuraj Devangan. I've been working with like developing as well as like designing systems that are highly interoperable as adhere to like all this FHIR as well as CDS as well as HL7 standards. And I also help in developing end-to-end workflows with like agentic AI capabilities that also integrate with these systems.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayuraj. So let me take you through our agenda for today. So we will be beginning with an introduction to CDS hooks, basically what CDS hooks is, and then we will be talking more in detail about its impact in terms of clinical decision making. We will also see a few of user cases. Then we will speak about Mindbowser's integration strategies, and then speak a little bit more about data compliance and security. And at the end of this webinar, we will have a discussion session where you can ask your questions to our expert speakers, and they will be happy to answer. Throughout the session, we will also be having poll questions to keep it an interactive session. So please go ahead and answer those poll questions as soon as they pop up on your screen. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can just put them in the question and answer session, and we will address them at the end of the session. All right, let's begin. So as we begin, let's have a little bit of a question over here. You guys can go ahead and answer. It will pop up on your screen now, and you can answer the question based on relevance. All right, Abhinav, you can take it over from here.
Okay, thank you, Ishita.
Yes.
So, hi everyone. So, we'll be looking into what are exactly the CDS hooks are, how the CDS hook works, and what are the use cases of CDS hooks in decision making for the physicians or the providers. So, CDS hooks are basically the clinical decision support for providers and the physicians who are going through different documents to understand the patient details before treating them or while treating them, right? And it helps them to make sure they make the better decisions depending on the documentation or the history of the patient they have in their hand. So while going into while they're treating the particular patient, they had to go through a different documentations, right? The CCDA files, the different tabs in on their EHRs to understand the patient's history if it is available on the EHR, or go to the CCDA files to make sure that whatever history they have been received from the different EHRs or the different health like health applications as well, to make those decisions for the patient's better health. So what serious hooks are? It's in the particular event. Let's say for while the patient chart, it like the physician is reviewing the patient charts, and they wanted to get the patient's previous history with respect to their allergies or their let's say the lab test they have done in the particular year or the particular period of time. They don't. They need to go through the different documents, right? So to avoid this. Switching between the tabs or switching between moving between different applications to understand the patient's history, it is a bit of a difficult or the time consuming part for the physicians. So the CSOs allow uh, the physicians to make sure that they don't have to move through different applications or the tabs. They will just get a pop-up on their screen. It can be a suggestion card which will help them to understand whether the patient had the particular lab test in the previous 6 months or the year, so they can make a better decision on that scenario or that information they are getting on their screen. So it is particularly triggered by the EHR actions, right? So for an example, they are ordering medication for the patient per se. So while they're ordering, they don't know what kind of allergies or the drug interaction happens between the patient's allergies as well as the drug they are prescribing to the patients, right? So while they are accidentally prescribing the two different medications which are contradicting each other's substances and all, then it can be a pop-up or the suggestion card popping up on the screen, and they help the physician to understand, okay, this is the substance which the patient is allergic to, or the drugs which you are prescribing to the patient, it's like contradicting each other. So in that case of scenario, the suggestions cards helps them to understand on a real time basis, okay, we have to make this change so that the patient get the better medications and they don't have to face any allergies or any other uh, let's say secondary reaction based on the while consuming the drugs or the medications. So this is how the triggering of the CDS gets done in the EHRs. Then it gets delivered on the real time, right? So and it is a patient specific suggestion based on the data which are flowing from the patient or the EHR for the particular patient to the third party application, which analyzes that data and then sends these suggestions back to the CDS card. And depending on the context, it will whether it is relevant, it is logically fit, and it is helping this physician to make the better decision, it will pop up on your screen. So basis on these scenarios and the physician's current workflow, the triggers which we have defined, it can be order signing, it can be order suggestion, or it can be a patient view where they on a particular scenarios where it CDSUX can pop up and give the suggestions to physicians or the providers. Along with that, this integration happens like seamlessly because of the FHIR and the OAuth to all the interoperability points. So point of view where the data cannot be flown outside the EHR, let's without the security layer, right? So without any disruption to the workflow, as well as this seamless integration with the security layer helps the patient data secured, as well as it gets the output done from the third party application to the physician, so that they can have the better understanding of the patient's history and they can make a better decision for the patient. And it is built on the FHIR and the REST API, so it helps to make the better decisions based on the patient's context or the patient's history. So moving forward to the next slide. the benefits of CDSUX, as I mentioned, right? It integrate with the EHR to make the decision support. So while it is integrating with the EHR, it have the access like CDSUX, the backend application which gives the output to the CDSUX has the overall context or the data access of the patient's data seamlessly, and using the FHIR resources, whatever data we need with respect to the patient's history, the patient's data to make the better decisions on the relevant triggers. We have it, and we are uh, fetching the data on the clicks, and the analysis is done at the evaluation is done at the back end, and based on that evaluation, the response has been sent back to the particular CDS card. What it does along with that is it cuts the alert fatigue for the physicians, because the constant triggers on the screen of the suggestions, it is not necessary, or it is time consuming for the physicians or the providers. So the important part is to make sure that the important only relevant and the important suggestions should be thrown to the pop-up or the to the screen of the physician, so that they don't have this fatigue like going through these different pop-ups and different suggestion box, and they don't have to like ignore this suggestion box, they have to click or something. So serious hooks doesn't make that kind of thing. They are ignorable. They don't make any pauses in the workflow. They just seamless, and they make sure that the suggestion, once the suggestion is done, it can be closed immediately once the physician sees it or the clicks on the close button. Along with that, it helps the speed up the decision making for the physician, because whatever data they want at the particular situation, they have it available on their screen. Let's say a suggestion card, or the selection of different medication based on the scenario, or clicking on the link where they can open the third party application via the CDSUX or the CDS cards which are currently present on their screen. So these external applications which doesn't need any front end to be shown on the physician screen or in the EHR's workflow, and just they need the data to make the decisions and send back the output on the CDS hooks. These are the better scenarios, or the benefits of the CDS hooks helps the physicians to make those decisions in patient context and make the better decision for the patient's health. Moving forward to the next slide, Ishita. Yeah, we have a question, so you can read it and probably answer the better uh, options which you have on the screen. Okay. So, how the CDS hook works with respect to EHRs, the backend application we are trying to showcase you on the screen. Here's the sequence diagram where PCP logs into the EHR. They clicks on any patient and select that particular patient, and they performs the particular operation on the patient. Like they perform the task on the EHRs, right? While doing this, let's say there is a trigger event which we need to finalize while selecting the CDS hook, like which one do we want. So let's say for an example, order sign. So order sign is maybe either, let's say, a lab test, lab orders which are signing for the patient, or the medication. So let's say for the lab orders, they click on, like they are adding the lab which needs to be get done for the patients, and while adding those labs they miss out on something, right? So let's say you have the backend application ready with you which analyzes what kind of condition this patient is currently going through, and which particular labs it should go through the patient, like the patient should go through these lab tests to understand the better uh, understanding of the diseases or the conditions which the patient is in. So the backend application holds the particular set of tests which are relevant to the condition or the diagnosis which the patient has. So whenever the physician enters the lab test and click on the order sign button, right? At that time, when clicking on the order sign button, this evaluation of the orders which has been entered by the physician and the standard order list which has at the backend application, it checks whether all the orders are there or not. If there are something missing, it sends back the decision card to the EHR, and it showcase, okay, that one of the order is missing out of the list, and physician can click on the add order button, and that order gets inserted into the order list of the patient, and physician can click again on the order sign button, and that order gets signed back to the EHR, and then patient can go and do this test in the radiology labs or everywhere. So this is how the CDSoup works with respect to the interaction between the EHRs, the CDSoup services, and the backend application, which evaluates and gives the particular output for the CDSoup cards. So moving forward to the next slide, we have different use cases, right? As I mentioned, the lab test and recommendations. So missing labs, as I explained on the previous slide, how the lab tests which are recommended for the particular conditions, and if the physician misses out on anyone, our backend application can evaluate the current order list and make sure that if anything is missing, then it can showcase back to the physician, and they can add it onto the screen, like add it onto the order list based on the suggestions which are currently on the pop-up or the CDS card on the EHR. Then the medication safety use case, where the drug-to-drug interaction or any medication which are missing, or there can be a medication which is not suitable for the like the patient based on the drug interaction or the allergies that patient has. So these kind of scenarios are the use cases which we can utilize using the CDS cards, and make sure that the physician has the better understanding of the patient health based on the data which we are getting from the patient's FHIR resources, or which currently the data present on the EHR. Along with that, then there are care gaps, that the preventive screenings, right? The care gaps can be, let's say, on the patient chart window, if the patient, let's say for the patient who has been diagnosed with any heart issues, right? So they have to get done the lipid panel test in the previous year or a 1 year's time span. So the if the lipid panel test is not being done in the previous year, that pop-up can be showcased on the patient chart, which helps the physician to understand, okay, that the patient is not being like haven't have this test in the last year, so they can suggest this test in the next workflow while adding their different lab test, or they can go ahead and just add this particular lipid panel lab test into the order list. Along with that, the prior authorization use cases, or the eligibility benefit verification use cases, where physician can go ahead and like while ordering any drug, or ordering any services for the patient or the procedures, they can just while ordering these things, they will have the prior authorization details ready with them, and the and the FHIR resources will give these details back to the our third-party application, and the third-party application analyzes these details and send back the results back to the screen with respect to the prior authorization, with respect to the medication, as well as the services which are being covered inside those eligibility and benefit verification for the patient. So moving forward to the next slide, we have, okay, we have this next question. You can answer this. Okay. So EHR supports for these serious hooks. Currently, Epic, Cerner, and other EHRs like Allscripts, Nextgen, they all do support the serious hooks. But there are multiple serious hooks which are currently present, but few of them are being currently integrated or fully supported by these EHRs. So for Epic, there are three major serious hooks like patient view, order sign, and order select. These are the three major serious hooks which are currently being supported by the Epic. You can integrate these three serious hooks with respect to your application's use case, and you can utilize it to integrate your application to the Epic. Along with that, Cerner also supports a few of the serious hooks, as well as it supports mostly the Smart on Fire app launch, which we can do it via the serious hooks, which gives you a link of third-party application on the CDS card, and based on your use case, whether you want the application to be launched from the CDS hooks, or you just want to showcase the suggestions or the interaction part, then that can be done as well. and other EHRs like Meditech, Call Scripts, NextGen, all those being supported currently by the different cities as well. And moving forward to the next slide, we have the technical anatomy with respect to how the CDSOX can be implemented, and what are the things we need to make sure that while creating the CDSOX, triggering those CDSOX and implementing or integrating the CDSOX with EHR. So I would ask Mayuraj to help you on those things and make it better understand. So thank you, Ishita and Mayuraj. Now Mayuraj, next, it's you too.
Yeah, thanks, Abhinav. Let me just share my screen. Mm, okay. So, yep. So, like the CDS hooks are basically, I would say, like they are webhooks under the hood. So, when we take a webhook and then we standardize it across the like EHRs, so that they get like interoperable and are compatible with like all the EHRs. So that's when we get CDS hooks. So CDS hooks is like basically a spec of webhooks that is defined by HL7, and I would say like the biggest advantage of CDS hooks is that like these are like initiated from within the EHR. So like as Bob asked, like why use CDS hooks like instead of just FHIR APIs. So to use FHIR APIs, you'll probably need like some kind of authentication from EHR's end. Like some kind of launch may need to happen, or some kind of backend token exchange might need to happen. So like that is a extra step in a practitioner's workflow. They might need to go to a different site, or uh, like launch an embed application from within the EHR as well. So that will take an extra step. But CDS hooks work without any extra step in their workflow. Like it is triggered when a event occurs, or maybe when a specific criteria is met. So let's just say if the practitioner opens a patient view, then like the patient view hook will automatically get triggered, and that will be like less I would suggest like less distracting for the practitioner. So CDS hooks entire process is basically divided in 4 steps. So first step is the initiation or the trigger event, and we have like multiple like hooks for that. So for example, there is like order sign hook that is like that is triggered when we are signing any medication or service request, as well as like order select when we are selecting it, and the patient view hook. So whenever this like one of the event is triggered and this hook request is initiated, it is like directly sent to the like configured CDS provider. So maybe like there would be a third party service that is the request is being sent to. So mm, okay. So once the request is initiated, it is basically handled by a third-party server. And in that server, the first step would be to validate the request so that it comes from a proper client. And once the request is validated, what we can do is like we can process that request, and that request will have a context information of when the hook is triggered, as well as what hook is triggered, and all the prefetch conditions that we ask from the EHR at the time of configuring the CDS hooks. So once the context and all the relevant data is provided to the CDS hook processing part, it will basically evaluate the request and then like process it accordingly. So depending on how it's being processed, most CDS hooks are basically, I would say, like rule engines. So like it takes data and then modifies or like validates it with some other data tables, and then like sends back the response. So here either rule engine can be used, or like a simple straightforward process can be used, or for like complex data types that do not have like a homogeneous structure that like vary from time to time, we can use agentic AI solutions to parse and digest that information and take the relevant context and then produce a response for it. So yes, so in the response part there are like we usually send back cards, like all the responses in the cards format. And then in those cards, there are like mostly three sections and one meta section, I would suggest. So first section, that is info section, that is mandatory. We need to send back, if we are sending back a card, like it's not mandatory to send back cards every single time, so that like not every trigger or initiation requires a response. So if like, let's just say if no matches are found for some particular context, we don't need to send a card. But in case we do, we need to send the information part, like that is mandatory. After that, in the information part, it will be usually title and where the source, like where the card is originating from, so that like the practitioner has some idea of where card is coming from, as well as what that specific card does. And apart from that, we can add like suggestions to a card. Suggestions are basically action items, like it can create a resource, it can update a resource, a FHIR resource. So maybe we can like say, this is an alternative medication order. Instead of what you are creating, we are suggesting for you to like create this medication item. So in that case, what will happen is, in the pop-up, like the CDS pop-up, the practitioner will see a button that he can press to acknowledge that decision of like using that like a particular resource. And there's also a link section, so we can also provide a smart Fire link that can directly launch an embed application within the EHR, or we can also redirect it to an external link. Apart from this, one section is there mostly for overriding reasons. So it is used to like override the default behavior of the EHR. Like usually the default behavior is like the cars that is shown would be automatically closed. So if you for some reason don't want that card to be closed like automatically, or you want some uh, other reason for it to stay longer, then we can pass an override reason. But that is not mostly advised. So we should only use it when it's like really necessary. Okay, moving on. So let's just take an example of CDS service. Let's just say we are in an order select menu and we are creating a medication order. So what our CDS hook can take is like, it will be triggered with all the context, and then once the context is given to a CDS service, it will process the information. Maybe it will suggest an alternative medication for a cheaper price. So like by matching it to some external database, and then that CDS service will respond with a card that will have an information section, like maybe let's just say it will say the cheaper medication available, and then in suggestion section will have the specific resource, medication order resource that needs to be switched with, as well as the smart F link if let's just say practitioner wants to configure something, or maybe practitioner does not want CDS to be like checking the specific medication order. So for that cases, we can have a smart link as well. So this is like a basic process of it. Apart from this process, a configuration step needs to be done when we are like setting up the CDS hooks. There are two ways we can do it. Like first, the HL7, like the CDS spec provides a way that is like the official way, I would say. That in that way, the CDS provider will usually have to have like an endpoint, a discovery endpoint, and that discovery endpoint will respond back with the CDS hooks information. Like we support like tree hooks and like order select hook, and then according to that, the EHR responds to it. So if there are like three hooks, they will be automatically registered in the EHR. So every time the EHR starts up, it will update its records with like calling the discovery service. In case like some EHRs do not support the discovery service like Epic, so we'll have to manually go and configure the like EHR API endpoints, and as well as what the prefetch conditions for these are. In discovery, they will be automatically fetched. There is a question for you guys. You can answer this. Okay. So this is the CDS Hooks Sandbox website, which like cdshooks.org provide for testing and implementing basic CDS hooks. So in this is a like RxU, but this is like similar to a order select screen, and it will we basically be calling our order select service that we are like locally hosting right now. So to add another CDS service, we can like go to the add services section, and we will have to enter the discovery endpoint for our CDS service, and it will automatically fetch all the relevant hooks from it. So in this case, let's just say we have a medication, like let's say aspirin, and we are treating, just say, disorder of lung maybe. So once we do this, CDS like hook will automatically get called. We don't need to do anything. So we will see a card in section. Okay, so this is the card that is it's like similar to the card that we are going to see in the EHR, but there are like going to be a attention to detail in that depending upon the EHR. So this is the information section. So this is basically the where the CDS card is originating from and the source. And then if you want to add images, you can do that. And these buttons are basically the suggestions action items. So like this is suggesting me a PFT test and an MRI test, like to go along with the medication order as well. So this is just a basic example. So maybe like there was no need for any card if matches, like it doesn't match in suggestions. Like if we select the Alzheimer's disease, I don't think this card will be removed or like, so not all CDS requests need to be responded with cards. We can just send a blank empty array like this because like, yeah, it is like optional to send cards, but if we are sending cards, the information section is mandatory. And going back to okay, so what are the best practices for CDS? So firstly, always provide relevant suggestions. As I like said, not all requests need to be responded. Apart from that, the latency of the CDS hooks will be really like need to be very fast. Like you just saw, the latency was higher, so it will take time. Then the practitioner will just move on to his next process. So the latency should be kept minimum. So it's like best to like cache request as like frequently as possible. Apart from that, the cards and the suggestion action items should be kept to like one action item per card, simply for the like so it's not confusing for the practitioner. Like instead of responding with multiple suggestion cards, it's better to just like have one action item. And I think some EHRs only allowed for one card to have one action item. Apart from that, it's better to not like it's better to check for duplicates. So that can be done by like whenever a CDS card is shown and it's acknowledged, the CDS service usually receives a feedback. So in that feedback, it shows like if the suggestion was acted upon or not. So depending on that, we can like remove duplicates as well. So like not to be redundant in that way. Okay, so like summarizing it all, usually what happens is event occurs and CDS hook request is originated, and then the CDS service, CDS backend will basically evaluate the request and check if it's authenticated or not, if coming from a correct client or not, and then it will process the request and respond with cards, and then basically the practitioner will, depending on the use case, will select it or ignore it, and then like there is no distraction in its workflow. It's basically a pop-up. So he doesn't need to do a launch, or he doesn't need to open a separate website for this integration. Yep, this is how like sample CDS card looks like in Epic systems. So like either you can acknowledge and continue without selecting the order, or you can like refer to a storyboard. That would be all from my end.
Thank you again to our audience for being patient and interactive as well in terms of answering the poll questions. As promised, at the end of this webinar, we will be sharing the entire webinar recording for reference. We will also be sharing a Gen AI white paper, and as a bonus, we will be sharing our CDS hooks integration implementation guide with you as well via email. Now, let's open the forum for question and answers. So before we begin, another poll question popping up on your screen. So go ahead and quickly answer that. and then we shall open up the session for question and answers. Throughout the session, we already do have a couple of questions that are in, and still, if you do have any other questions, please be sure to put them in the question and answer session, and we will be sure to answer them. Although due to time constraints, won't be able to answer all your questions, but you may be sure that we will get in touch with you via email and answer and address your questions respectively. Right? So Abhinav and Mayraj, I do see questions that are already in. So let's take them up one by one. The first question I see over here is from Ava. She is asking, how do AI agents differ from traditional clinical decision support systems? I think, Mayraj, you would be able to answer this in the right manner. So if you could take
Yeah.
this one up, please.
Yes, yes. So the traditional CDS,
Mayraj?
sorry, am I audible or not?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. So like for the like traditional CDS systems, what happens is the process is like set in stone, I can say. Basically, the process will only take a certain type of data and then like evaluate it. So in in healthcare, usually we see the data is not homogeneous always. Like if you think about like data coming from a insurance provider or it's the benefits data. So this data is certainly complex and it's not of like same type from like every single vendor. So in those cases, we can have like something that works in an organic way. So the LLM based agents, this works in an like organic way that they can digest the data and understand what this data is, and then like create relevant objects for these data. Like maybe some insurance data will require an update to a coverage, or some may not. But to judge it in like before it happens, it's like really hard. So I would suggest like it depends upon the use case mostly.
Right. Wonderful. And then I do see another question here from Stacy. He would like to know what interoperability standards are supported by CDS6. I think, Abhinav, you'd be able to answer this one with the right relevance. If you could take this one up, please.
Yeah, sure, Ishita. So, with respect to interoperability standards, first one is you need to have the FHIR because you want to share the clinical data from the EHR to your backend application, let's say a labs data, medication, the patient's condition, etc. The second one would be the OAuth 2.0 or the JWT tokens, which make sure that the security layer appears between your EHR as well as your third-party application, which handles this evaluation at the back end. And the security layer by OAuth 2.0 makes sure that the data transferred between two different systems should be secured while transferring and getting the output back from the third-party application, as well as the series hook specs, which defines what are the hook points, what are the contexts, and what are the card options or the structure should be when it comes to showcasing this with respect to the use case. Then the series hook spec should be there as well. Then the Smart on Fire app, which is kind of an optional thing depending on your use case, whether you want to showcase the user facing app from the CDS card or do you want to do it or not. It depends on your use case, but that can be an optional thing as well with respect to the interoperability part of CDS.
Wonderful. Thank you, Abhinav. I hope that answers your question, Stacy. If you do have any other questions, you can get in touch with us respectively. Now, I do see another question from Gary asking, how does CDS6 ensure patient data privacy and security? I think this is another one, Mayuraj, you can take up if you could please.
Yes. So like as Abhinav explained, there is a security layer, a security concern. Usually what happens in CDS hooks request is that we do get epic maybe like EHR token. So that token can be validated from the like CDS side. So usually that token is a JWKS key set. So basically it means that we'll get to validate it from like the provider's end. So when the like token gets to the CDS service, it will do a callback to its like trusted sources. So if a provider is in a trusted source, it will like validate it there, and if it validates properly, then it's like it's known that the request is originated from the correct place. Only then the CDS hook will work properly. So yeah, that way it ensures like no malicious communication can come to a CDS service, and everything that happens in the back end. So there is no human error involved in this.
Right.
Like
Thank you,
yeah.
Mayuraj. All right. Another question here from Matthew asking, how can similar healthcare organization adopt these technologies affordability? So I think, Abhinav, you can help answer this question, please.
Uh, sure, Ishita. So, with respect to affordability of these kind of technology depends on what kind of use case you are having. With respect, let's start with let's say a high value use cases where you can bring like focus on one or two clinical problems where CDSOX can bring immediate return on investment, such as maybe missed lab follow-ups, as I mentioned, or the drug-to-drug interaction or the allergy interactions, so the maybe a duplicate imaging or test orders. So these kind of small more valuable problem like value able insights with respect to these problems will make sure that you are affordably taking the serious hooks into integration with respect to your use cases, as well as you can maybe check with the EHR vendors for the partner pricing, where they can waive or reduce the integration fees for the smaller organizations, or provide sandbox environment for the testing first and like a free testing, and then they can give you the overall pricing once you start using it based on the usage as well, or somewhere kind of lightweight interface based on the CDS hooks for the before the full integration as well. uh, Also, maybe the small organization can apply for the grants or the innovation refunds or innovation funds, where from the CMS innovation pilots or state level digital health funds or maybe HHS grants or something like that. So they can afford these uh, technologies into their use cases or integrate with these EHRs using the CDSOX.
Right. All right, let's take a couple of more questions here and then we shall wrap up the session. If you guys still do have any questions, be sure to put them in the question and answer session and we will go ahead and answer those for you, okay? So another question from Lara, she would like to know, how do you track ROI and clinical impact after rollout? Abhinav, I think this is another one that you would be able to answer best. If you could go ahead and do so, please.
Probably we have to make sure that how many clicks we are getting on or how many pop-ups we are sending back to the EHR based on the context we are getting to our backend, and depending on the evaluation, how many cards we are suggesting, or how many clicks which has been happening on the front end side while the physician thinks, okay, this is the better suggestion from the cards and we can utilize it. So based on the clicks and on or the APIs which are sending back these particular cards, which will help us to understand how much we are utilizing the cards, and the return on investment based on the patient's maybe we can say the patient's outcome based on these suggestions as well. So
Right. Thank you, Abhinav. I think we can take one last question and then let's wrap up after that. Here's a question from Andrew. He would like to know what measures are taken to avoid alert fatigues with CDS hooks. I think, Mayuraj, this is a suitable question that you'd be able to answer. If you could please go ahead and answer this one.
Yes, sure, Ishta. So to avoid alert fatigue, is like best to not respond with cards like for every single CDS request. Only respond when necessary, and like not to use override reasons as frequent, because as like we discussed before, the override reasons are going to make the cards take longer for. So that's usually not advised. Apart from that, like not like we should not like overutilize CDI soaps, the CDI soaps, right? So like sometimes things are complicated that we need to have like multiple steps of actions like needs to be taken. So for those cases, it's better to use some other kind of launch, maybe like a have an embedded application launch or have an external like separate site for it, but not to handle those scenarios in CDS hooks. Like everything has its limitation, right? So CDS hooks also has them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayraj. I hope that that helps answer your question, Andrew. So let's wrap up this session after this question. And thank you again to our participants for asking these questions. And thank you to our expert speakers for sharing their knowledge. If you guys have any other questions or concerns regarding CDS hooks or anything related to this webinar and the knowledge shared, you can get in touch with us and have a consultation session with our expert speakers as well. With that, again, I would like to thank everyone for their active participation. I would like to thank our speakers for sharing their knowledge. And as promised, the webinar assets will be shared with you, and I will keep you updated on our upcoming webinars as well. Thank you again to our audience, and thank you for sharing your knowledge, our speakers.